President Joe Biden said he would cut the prison population of America in half, yet at the moment it's growing. When did he mean by, how long's this guy planning to live?
Equality, equity, fairness, decency. These words are the basis for the American creed.
That's why I proposed a comprehensive criminal package in this campaign. It begins with passing the Safe Justice Act.
During his campaign, President Joe Biden pledged repeatedly to reduce the country's prison population. I'm going to reduce it. I'm going to reduce the prison population. If you repeatedly say something while you're campaigning, I suppose there's a reasonable expectation that that's something that will come to pass. But whether it's drone strikes, military action, abroad, prison populations, what you see is, well, I don't know, it's hardly original to say that politics has become a kind of theatre, a kind of spectacle.
No mandatory minimums, the end of private prison, additional funding for drug courts, bail reform, no juveniles at all in adult prisons, mandatory treatment, not jail for those with drug addiction, decriminalizing marijuana, automatically expunging records for marijuana convictions.
The country's prison population, I'm sure you know, is disproportionately composed of people of colour. And Joe Biden repeatedly and sometimes clumsily gestured and pointed towards the idea that he would be the best option for African Americans, non-white Americans. And I feel like that race, it's fair to say, was mobilised as an issue in that election. And it feels to me, therefore, that justice pertaining particularly to issues around that, and, you know, given the nature of the prison population in the US, this will be one area where improvement could be expected, certainly based on the campaign pledges offered by Biden. Later he said he didn't want to be bound by a percentage. I don't want to be bound by a percentage. Sure, yeah, I hate percentages as well. When you say something like, I don't want to be bound by a percentage, I mean, what I'm saying now is not true. And then if I don't commit to it fully, you won't be able to go, see, when you said that about a percentage, all you can show now is a bit of footage of me saying, I don't like to be bound by percentages. But he reiterated that he hoped to drastically lower the number of people locked up. But 6 months into his term, these promises are ringing hollow. The number of people in federal prisons is growing, and Biden's legal team recently announced that thousands of people who were released early from federal prisons last year to slow the spread of the coronavirus could be forced to return again after the pandemic ends.
The public is ready. They are ready. They've had enough.
This is the most telling sign yet. His administration has criminal justice low on its list of priorities. Despite the campaign promises to the country, Rachel Barkow, an NYU law professor, wrote after the news broke, I honestly don't know how anyone who cares about criminal justice reform and works in this administration can stand by and let it happen. Let me explain it to you, Rachel. No one in that administration does care about criminal justice reform. Have you not been watching? No one cares. What people care about, my assumption is, and forgive me if I'm being cynical, is to continue to grow the prison industrial complex, to stabilise and continue to create a culture and social systems whereby poor people can be utilised by prison labour systems that are as close to slavery as it's possible to achieve without admitting to slavery. So that you shouldn't be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised because someone says a bunch of stuff while campaigning for an office that it seems historically requires a good degree of manipulating the truth, a certain amount of lying, and above all else, the preservation of systems that go beyond the interests of ordinary people, by which I mean almost everyone, but for a few institutions and international financial interests. Other than that, that's not what a government is designed for. The whole business of government is to distract you from that. We know that, don't we? Why are we even still talking about this? All of the prisoners released under that coronavirus move were left with the idea that they were staying home, said Kevin Ring, president of the criminal justice reform group FAM. It wasn't like the prison was saying, we'll see you back here in 6 or 9 months. No one thought that. It's also a whole mad move, isn't it? Like, just let people out of prison. Right, there's a pandemic, get out. Right, pandemic's over, get back in. Oh, there's another pandemic, out you go again. It's very difficult to have trust in organisations and institutions and politicians that behave in this manner.
I believe my criminal justice reform package is as strong or stronger than anyone else's. I'm amazed how far we've come, but I know how much further we have to go and what we're capable of doing. And we can get there together.
The decision could affect about 4,000 people who were convicted of non-violent offences. Basically what you're dealing with there is poverty. And my mate who does a lot of sort of prison work says when you go into prisons, it's not like, these are murderers. It's like, yeah, these people are mentally ill, these people are drug addicts, these people are poor, they're sick, they're unwell. One time in a documentary I did, I went on a drug raid with the British police force and kicked open the door to a crack house. I've been addicted to crack before and been in crack houses before. But I remember going into this place in recovery, and as the doors of the crack house flung open, or more likely one door, it weren't a mansion, the people sat in that crack house. It's just like, it's the same vibe if you've ever had the misfortune or necessity to visit a ward of terminally ill people, just people just on the brink of death. Same as with many of the derided, judged and devalued portions of the population, homeless people. No one is queuing up to be a homeless person. No one's queuing up to be a drug addict. It's a terrible inconvenience. It's the persecution of ill people. My guess would be that of that 4,000 people who've been convicted of non-violent offences, a significant number of them will have chemical dependency issues, and those chemical dependency issues are brought about not just because of individual inflictions and tendencies, although that could be a part of it, but because of social problems, the very social problems that are being ignored and again overlooked by this U-turn by the Biden administration. It's like waiting to be sentenced all over again, said Wendy Hetchman, who's serving 15 years for a drug crime. What's the point in keeping people in prison for drug offences, especially with the opioid crisis that's happening in America, where there are really powerful interests that are being further empowered and prioritised by current events. That's the kind of thing that's going to make a difference, that's going to change culture, that's going to change society. If you've seen films like The 13th or The House I Live In, you'll be familiar with the idea that certain drugs carry very punitive, long sentences, whilst other drugs are party drugs. The stratification of society continues even at the level of illegal activity.
No one should be going to jail because they are addicted. They should be going into rehabilitation.
If people are already out on home confinement and they're home with their families and they're not committing new crimes, said Inamai Chettiar, Federal Director of the Justice Action Network, then it does seem cruel and unnecessary and unreasonable to force the Federal Bureau of Prisons to bring them back to prison. What could the reason be? I suppose if we were to research it extensively, we would discover that there are sort of relationships established through lobbying and donation that prioritise a commitment to grow, expand and to continue to build and maintain new prisons and provide contracts to the people that provide the food and to continue to have the prison labour used to facilitate manufacture. You know all that kind of stuff. You can do your own research. We don't have to kill ourselves, do we? Just to continue to point out that all of the enthusiasm, all of the zeal, wherever you fall, in my opinion, on the political spectrum, is a big bunch of hocus pocus. When it comes to the crunch, you're going to get the same sort of government and the same sort of people will ultimately suffer regardless of which of these limited set of options are empowered. But I might be wrong. I've been wrong many, many times. And you can tell me if you think I'm wrong in the comments. But make sure you subscribe to my channel, please. I would appreciate it. Go over to russellbrand.com and sign up for my newsletter. Then we can communicate directly. And you can hear about stuff that I'm doing that we can be more directly involved in together. If you need to meditate, go over to my side channel, Awakening, and try a meditation. Give yourself a little bit of respite from this crazy, intense, constantly corroming world of intellectual activity, damn it. And my podcast. I do one podcast every single week where I have a deep conversation. Like, I've got brilliant people on there, people that you will just love. Have a look at it. It's on Luminary. You subscribe to it, you can get it on Apple. Also, I do guided meditations there, all included in the subscription. If you like this video, then you'll probably like this one as well, and indeed this one. You'll probably like this one a bit better than this one, but you know the truth. Stay away from that one.